A remote roadside coffee stand sits tucked away on the outskirts of a long, winding highway. The early morning sun casts a warm golden hue over the asphalt, glistening from the morning dew. The air is thick with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee, mingling with the scent of pine from the surrounding forest. A light breeze rustles the leaves, adding to the tranquil ambience. Despite its small size, the coffee stand is a beloved stop for weary travelers, truckers looking for a break, bikers needing a caffeine fix, and locals who have come to appreciate the place as a hidden gem. The stand's wooden exterior is weathered but well kept, and a few picnic tables are scattered nearby for those who prefer to sit and enjoy their drinks under the vast sky. The place is peaceful, a rare oasis along the otherwise monotonous stretch of road. Samantha "Sam" Carter, the enigmatic yet warm-hearted woman who owns and operates the stand. Her presence is commanding yet approachable, with a quiet confidence that intrigues those who meet her. Beneath her calm demeanor lies a past few know about, a past shaped by years in the military, training, and discipline that have made her a formidable woman. She chooses to keep to herself, finding solace in the simple life of running her coffee stand, serving customers, and avoiding unnecessary conflict. Sam wears practical clothing, jeans, a flannel shirt, and sturdy boots. Her sharp blue eyes miss nothing, and her athletic build hints at a strength that belies her role as a mere coffee vendor. Though she speaks little about herself, those who frequent her stand respect her unwavering patience and quiet strength. Tom, the old trucker, a retired long-haul driver with a kind heart and a weathered face that tells stories of years spent on the road. He enjoys chatting with Sam, often lingering with his coffee while sharing tales of the places he's been. Lucy, the waitress, a bright-eyed young woman who works at a diner a few miles down the road. She looks up to Sam, admiring her independence and resilience. She often stops by before or after her shifts, drawn to the comforting atmosphere of the stand. The peaceful morning is interrupted by the distant rumble of motorcycle engines. The sound grows louder, cutting through the serenity like a storm approaching on the horizon. A small group of bikers rolls in, their presence immediately shifting the energy at the coffee stand. Among them, Deke, the leader, stands out, a tall, rugged man with a cocky smirk and a penchant for trouble. His crew, brash, loud, and unbothered by the presence of others, begin to disrupt the peaceful vibe. Engines rev unnecessarily, laughter erupts at crude jokes, and the scent of exhaust lingers in the air. Deke strides up to the counter, eyeing the modest coffee stand with mild amusement. He scoffs. "A little place like this? Who even stops here?" he mutters, loud enough for everyone to hear. His crew chuckles, feeding off his energy. Deke strides up to the counter, eyeing the modest coffee stand with mild amusement. He scoffs, shaking his head. "A little place like this? Who even stops here?" he mutters, loud enough for everyone to hear. His crew chuckles, feeding off his energy. They spread out, leaning against the wooden railing, their leather jackets creaking as they shift. The hum of motorcycles cooling in the background adds to the tension. Tom, the old trucker sitting at the corner table, glances up from his coffee, his weathered face unreadable. Lucy, the young waitress from the nearby diner, pauses mid-sip, shooting a concerned glance at Sam. Sam, however, doesn't flinch. She stands calmly behind the counter, wiping her hands on a clean rag before setting it aside. Her eyes meet Deke's, steady and unreadable. "Plenty of folks stop here," she replies evenly, nodding toward the small line of cars and trucks parked off to the side. Truckers, travelers, folks looking for a good cup of coffee. Deke smirks, tapping his knuckles against the wooden counter. "That's so. Well, I guess we'll be the judge of that, sweetheart." His voice carries a mocking edge, and the other bikers laugh. One of them, a burly man with a long beard, leans in. "Yeah, we got high standards." Another biker, younger and leaner, stays quiet. Jake, unlike the others. His gaze flickers between Sam and his crew, an uncertain look crossing his face. Sam doesn't rise to the bait. She simply pours a fresh cup of coffee, setting it on the counter in front of Deke. "Then I hope it meets expectations," she says coolly. Deke picks up the cup, taking a slow, deliberate sip. He smacks his lips, exaggerating the action, before shrugging. He mutters, setting it back down with a heavy clink. "I've had worse." His crew laughs again, louder this time. A few of them step closer, their presence growing more intrusive. Tom shifts in his seat. Lucy grips her coffee cup a little tighter. The air thickens with a quiet tension. Sam, however, remains the picture of calm. "You fellas need anything else?" she asks, her tone as even as ever. Deke grins, leaning an elbow on the counter. "Yeah," he says, eyes glinting. "Entertainment." They begin testing Sam's patience, leaning against the counter, making inappropriate comments, and speaking just a little too loudly. Tom and Lucy exchange uneasy glances, silently questioning whether Sam will react. But Sam remains calm. She doesn't flinch, doesn't show the slightest sign of irritation. Instead, she watches, observing every movement, every shift in posture. She's dealt with worse. This is nothing. Yet, a storm is brewing. The bikers don't realize it yet, but they've just chosen the wrong woman to mess with. The bikers swagger up to the counter, their boots scuffing against the pavement as they glance around with mocking amusement. Deke, still smirking, gestures lazily toward the coffee menu. "Guess I'll take a coffee. Black. None of that fancy crap," he drawls, fishing a few crumpled bills from his pocket. Instead of handing them over, he tosses them onto the counter, where they flutter and land haphazardly near Sam's hand. The rest of the crew follows suit, some deliberately throwing their cash onto the floor, snickering as they watch for her reaction. Sam doesn't flinch. With practiced ease, she picks up the bills, straightens them out, and rings up their order without a word. Her silence unnerves them, just a little. They were expecting frustration, maybe even anger. Instead, they get nothing but a measured, unreadable gaze. One of the bikers, a lanky man with a stained leather vest, leans on the counter with a grin. "So, lady, what's a tough little thing like you doing all the way out here?" he asks, his voice dripping with condescension. Sam pours their coffee, unfazed, serving drinks to customers, even the rude ones. A few of them chuckle at her dry tone, but Deke isn't amused. He steps closer, towering over the counter. "That's so. Maybe we'll stick around a bit. See if your hospitality extends beyond just coffee." Lucy, watching from the side, stiffens at the implication. Tom grips his mug a little tighter, his knuckles turning white. Sam simply raises an eyebrow. You can stay as long as you like. As long as you remember. This is my stand. My rules. The challenge is subtle, but it's there. And Deke doesn't like being challenged. Deke's smirk twists into something meaner. He picks up a nearby sugar jar, slowly unscrewing the lid. Without breaking eye contact with Sam, he turns it upside down, dumping the entire contents across the counter in a messy, deliberate motion. The white grains scatter everywhere, coating the wooden surface in a sticky, unnecessary mess. The other bikers laugh, nudging each other as if they've just witnessed some great act of dominance. Jake, the youngest in the group, shifts uncomfortably at the display. His fingers twitch at his side, but he says nothing. Sam looks at the mess, then at Deke. She calmly grabs a rag from under the counter and wipes the sugar aside, her movements slow and deliberate. When she speaks, her voice is polite, but there's steel underneath. I think you've had enough fun. Time to take your coffee and leave. Deke lets out a bark of laughter, turning to his crew. You hear that? She thinks she can tell us what to do. One of the other bikers, a burly guy with tattoos snaking up his arms, crosses his arms. And what if we don't? Sweetheart. The atmosphere shifts. The joking, the taunting, it all takes on a sharper edge. The bystanders sense it too. A few customers hurriedly finish their drinks and slip away, while others remain frozen, watching anxiously. Tom, unable to hold back any longer, stands up from his seat. Listen, boys, he says, voice rough but firm. This ain't the place for your games. You got your coffee, now be on your way. Deke turns to him, amused. And what are you gonna do about it, old man? Tom meets his gaze without fear. Not me. But I'd be real careful about messing with her. He nods toward Sam. Deke scoffs, but there's a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Jake's internal conflict. Jake watches the exchange, his stomach twisting. He never liked how Deke pushed people around, but speaking up would mean going against the group, and that was dangerous. He clenches his fists, debating whether to intervene or keep his mouth shut. Tom's protective side. Tom knows Sam isn't the type to need saving, but that doesn't mean he'll stand by while a bunch of punks try to intimidate her. He's been around long enough to recognize real danger when he sees it, and he doesn't like where this is heading. Customers' reactions. Lucy grips her tray, torn between fear and admiration. The few remaining customers exchange nervous glances, some debating whether to step in or pretend they don't see what's happening. The tension builds like a coiled spring. Sam finally moves. She leans forward slightly, her expression unreadable, but something in her eyes shifts, something cold, something deadly. When she speaks, her voice is quiet, controlled. I'll say this once. Her gaze locks onto Deke's. You don't want to push me. The laughter dies down. Deke's smirk wavers just for a second, his instincts kicking in, warning him that something about this woman is different. But he shakes it off. No way is he backing down now. He grins, stepping even closer. Oh yeah. And what exactly are you gonna do about it? Sam doesn't answer. She doesn't need to. because they have no idea who they're dealing with. The air is thick with tension, the silence stretching as Deke stares Sam down. His pride won't let him back off, not after she's made him look weak in front of his crew. With a sneer, he reaches over the counter, aiming to grab Sam's arm, maybe yank her forward, just to show her who's really in charge here. Bad move. Before his fingers can even brush her sleeve, Sam reacts. In one fluid motion, she grips his wrist, twists it at an unnatural angle, and slams it down onto the wooden counter with a force that rattles the coffee cups. A sharp, involuntary grunt escapes Deke's lips as pain shoots through his arm. His knees buckle slightly, and for the first time, real shock flashes in his eyes. The other bikers jump to their feet, chairs scraping against the pavement, their bravado suddenly cracking. No one expected this. No one expected her. But Sam doesn't let go. She leans in, her voice as steady as ever. "I warned you." Deke yanks his hand back, cradling his wrist as he stumbles a step away. His face burns with humiliation, his anger boiling over. "No way," one of the bikers mutters. "What the hell was that?" Lucy stares, her mouth slightly open. Tom doesn't look surprised, just grimly satisfied. Deke shakes off the pain, his pride stung too deep to let it go. He snarls and lunges again, this time swinging wildly, aiming to put Sam in her place. He never gets close. Sam moves like a shadow, sidestepping at the last second. She hooks his arm, using his own momentum against him, and flips him over her shoulder. Deke crashes onto the pavement with a grunt, the impact knocking the wind out of him. A split-second hush falls over the scene. Then chaos erupts. Two of the bikers rush her at once. Sam doesn't hesitate. The first swings a fist. She ducks, sweeps his legs out from under him, and he collapses hard onto the ground. The second grabs a chair and tries to swing it at her. She blocks with her forearm, then drives her elbow into his sternum, knocking him breathless. They don't get up. The remaining bikers hesitate now, watching their so-called leader and crew drop like flies. Jake stands frozen, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. He knew Deke was an idiot, but this was something else. Sam dusts off her hands, her expression as calm as ever. "Still think I'm just a coffee stand owner?" Deke scrambles to his feet, his breaths ragged with fury and humiliation. "Who the hell are you?" he spits. Tom chuckles from his seat. "Should have listened to me, kid." Sam sighs. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that you walk away." But Deke isn't listening. His fingers twitch at his side, and then a flicker of silver, a switchblade, small but deadly, glinting in the morning sun. Gasps ripple through the bystanders. Lucy steps back, eyes wide. Even some of the bikers shift uncomfortably. "Deke, don't," Jake says, his voice low. But Deke isn't hearing anything except the roaring in his head. He grips the knife tight, his knuckles white, his entire body coiled with frustration. Sam exhales, shaking her head. "You really don't want to do that." Deke smirks. "And what are you gonna do about it?" "Ha!" Then he lunges. The switchblade slices through the air, aiming straight for Sam's side, but she's already moving. She pivots, stepping out of the blade's path with effortless precision. Before Deke can adjust, she seizes his wrist, twisting it sharply. The knife clatters to the ground. In the next second, she's behind him, using his own momentum to flip him forward, hard. He hits the pavement again, this time face first. Sam kneels beside him, pressing the very switchblade he pulled up against his throat. The world holds its breath. Deke's chest heaves, his face twisted with rage. But there's something else there now, fear. Sam's voice is a whisper, cold and steady. You ever come back here? You ever mess with me or anyone at this stand again? I won't be so polite. Deke swallows, unable to move. The metal against his skin is a reminder of just how fast things turned against him. She releases him. He gasps, scrambling backward, rubbing his sore throat. The other bikers don't move. They exchange uneasy glances before slowly stepping forward to help Deke to his feet. No more arrogance. No more cocky grins. They know they lost. Jake looks at Sam, something shifting in his eyes. Then he turns to his crew, his so-called family. I'm done, he says, his voice firm. Deke glares at him. What? Jake shakes his head. This isn't what I signed up for. I'm out. And just like that, he walks away, leaving the gang behind. The others hesitate. Then one by one, they follow. Deke is the last to leave, his bruised pride barely holding him together. He shoots one last glare at Sam, but she's already turning back to her stand, unbothered, because she knows he won't be coming back. A heavy silence lingers in the air as the defeated bikers gather themselves, dusting off their jackets. Bruised and humiliated, they stagger back toward their motorcycles. Deke, his pride shattered, rubs his sore wrist and shoots Sam one last glare. But this time, there's no smirk, no cocky attitude, just raw frustration and the sting of defeat. Without another word, he swings a leg over his bike, revving the engine angrily. One by one, the others follow suit, some exchanging uncertain glances, their egos still smarting from the unexpected turn of events. Then, as if acknowledging their loss, they ride off, the roar of their engines fading into the distance. The moment the last biker disappears down the road, a wave of tension lifts. The bystanders, who had been watching with bated breath, finally exhale. A few of them, regulars who had grown fond of Sam's little coffee stand, start clapping hesitantly before it builds into a genuine cheer. Tom grins, stepping forward. He places a firm hand on Sam's shoulder. Didn't doubt you for a second, kid. Lucy, still gripping her coffee cup, shakes her head in disbelief. That was unreal. Sam merely wipes her hands on a napkin, unfazed. Just another morning. As the crowd settles, Lucy approaches the counter, eyes still wide with awe. Okay, seriously, what was that? Sam raises an eyebrow, pouring herself a fresh cup of coffee. What was what? Lucy scoffs. Oh, don't play coy. You just took down an entire gang of bikers like it was nothing. Where the hell did you learn to fight like that? Sam hesitates for a moment, then smirks, taking a slow sip of coffee. Let's just say I wasn't always making lattes for a living. Tom chuckles knowingly. She's being modest. Sam here used to serve her country. Special Forces. Lucy's jaw practically drops. Wait, what? Sam shrugs. It was a long time ago. Lucy stares at her in amazement. And now you run a coffee stand? Sam exhales, looking out at the horizon, the golden morning light stretching across the quiet road. I wanted a simple life, but sometimes trouble finds you anyway. Lucy shakes her head, smiling. Remind me never to tick you off. As the morning rush starts to settle, Sam takes a moment to enjoy the peace. But it doesn't last long. Footsteps approach, hesitant, slow. She turns to see Jake, standing a few feet away, his hands shoved into his pockets. His face is tense, but there's no hostility in his eyes, just regret. Mind if I? He gestures toward the counter. Sam studies him for a moment, then nods. Go ahead. Jake steps forward, rubbing the back of his neck. Look, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. I should have spoken up. Sam leans on the counter, watching him carefully. But you didn't. Jake sighs. Yeah, I didn't. He looks down, kicking at a loose pebble. I was just, he exhales. I don't know. Scared? Stupid. Sam doesn't say anything at first. Then, instead of scolding him, she reaches for a fresh coffee cup, filling it to the brim. She slides it across the counter toward him. Here. Jake blinks, confused. What's this? Coffee. Sam says simply. You look like you need it. Jake hesitates, then takes the cup, wrapping his hands around the warmth. You're not just your mistakes, Sam says after a moment. But it's up to you to make better choices moving forward. Jake swallows hard and nods. Yeah, I think I'm ready to. And for the first time that morning, he smiles. Maybe today isn't just an ending. Maybe it's a new beginning. Strength isn't just about throwing punches or taking down enemies. It's about knowing when to stand your ground. Sam never sought out conflict, but she also refused to be walked over. Her calm, unwavering presence spoke louder than any threat. Strength isn't just about throwing punches or taking down enemies. It's about knowing when to stand your ground, even when it would be easier to step aside. It's about understanding that real power doesn't come from intimidation or brute force, but from the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly who they are. Sam never sought out conflict. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone. She had spent years in places where survival depended on patience, strategy, and knowing when to act. But one thing was certain: she refused to be walked over. Her strength wasn't in flashy moves or reckless aggression. It was in her composure, her ability to read people, to see their intentions before they even made a move. It was in the way she remained unshaken in the face of hostility, standing firm while others faltered. Deke and his crew had come looking for control, for dominance. They had expected fear, deference, or maybe even anger. But what they got was something far more unnerving: calm, unwavering presence. Sam didn't need to threaten them. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her silence, her steady gaze, the way she handled herself, it all spoke louder than any words could. Strength, after all, isn't about starting fights. It's about knowing when to end them. It's about drawing a line and saying, without hesitation, this far and no further. And when the dust settled, when the bikers had been put in their place. It wasn't the force of her fists that had left the biggest impact. It was the way she carried herself, the quiet, undeniable proof that she was not someone to be underestimated. In a world where people are often judged by their appearance, Sam's story is a reminder. Real power isn't about looking tough. It's about discipline, confidence, and knowing your worth. She never had to prove herself to anyone, but when the time came, she let her actions speak. And in doing so, she taught a lesson those bikers would never forget. Word spreads quickly in small towns and along long, lonely highways. The story of the woman at the roadside coffee stand, the one who single-handedly took down a gang of bikers, starts to make its rounds. Some truckers whisper about it at rest stops. Locals swap stories over breakfast at the diner. Even those who weren't there claim they saw it happen. Some laugh it off as an exaggeration. Others believe every word. And while most steer clear of causing trouble at that quiet little stand, there are always a few who think they might be the exception. The kind who see a challenge where there isn't one. Will trouble find Sam again? Maybe. But one thing's for sure, she's always ready.